webinar will be recorded, and we will send an email to all of you with a link to where you could re-watch this webinar at any time that you'd like, as many times as you'd like. So now, if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. I will try to keep an eye on it so I can see when a hand is raised and a question is asked. Otherwise, I am going to minimize this little screen right here just because I want to get it out of my way. So again, today's webinar is on basic version 9 tech support. Probably the most common issue that we see in tech support when it comes to version 9 is a situation that all of you can probably relate to. Let's say that the computer freezes up while you're in the middle of a transaction. You're a little flustered, you want to help the customer, you're trying to buy a little time. You reboot the computer thinking, okay, well, let me just reboot it and restart, and then I'll be able to go ahead and finish this transaction. And that is very much the case. You can absolutely do that, but our instinct is that when we reboot the computer, as soon as we get up to the desktop, our instinct is to immediately start up Recalculating. And any of you that have done that know that it gets locked up at the plugins window. Like when it first brings up Recalculating, it goes through a series of screens where it tells you loading plugin information, loading screen layouts, that type of thing, and it gets stuck on the plugins section of that. So the reason for that is that the Oracle services take a few minutes to fire up even after you're on your desktop. So I'm going to right click on my computer and go into Manage. Okay, hopefully. Okay, so underneath Services and Applications and then Services, there are two Oracle services that need to be up and running at all times on your database computer. Typically, that's going to be Workstation 1. Okay, not exclusively, but 99% of the time that is the case. And so the two services that need to be running are this Oracle ODS 11, the listener, and you'll notice that mine is started. Also, and then I believe this service RPro ODS. As you can see, it's also started. Okay, those two services they take another 2 to 3 minutes after you're on the desktop before those are completely fired up. So I'm just going to minimize this for a moment. So let's say that I've gone ahead and I've opened up Recalculating 9 a little too soon. What you can do is right click on your screen, and I usually right click down here on my toolbar and go to Task Manager. You can also do a Control-Alt-Delete. That will also bring up an option for Task Manager. Now, what you're going to want to do is go to the Processes tab, and you're going to scroll down until you see the RPro 9 EXE. You want to highlight this and in the process, and then give it a couple more minutes and try to open up Recalculating again. And 99% of the time, that is going to fix the problem. Okay? So again, if you reboot your computer for any reason, give it a couple extra minutes after you're on the desktop to give Recalculating or the Oracle services a few extra minutes to fire up. Then go ahead and start Recalculating. If it hasn't been a long enough time, this is how you can kill the Recalculating, because it'll lock itself in or freeze on that loading page. So you need to stop the process and then give it a couple more minutes and then try it again. If that still is not working, you can come in and highlight the listener and restart it. Same with the RPro ODS. You have the restart option, and it basically will let you know when you click on restart, it will go through the process. And as soon as the little service control window goes away, you can see right here the status is started. Okay? Once you've restarted those services, go ahead and try to open up Retail Pro, and there shouldn't be any problem at that point in Retail Pro opening. Okay? That by far, I would say, is probably the call that we take the most, especially on the weekends, because obviously you're down, you can't ring up a sale, and I would say that we get at least 3 to 4 phone calls every weekend where that is the situation, where for whatever reason the computer's been rebooted and Retail Pro gets started too soon and the Oracle services are not completely started yet. So a real quick, easy way for you to troubleshoot if Retail Pro won't open. Now, another troubleshooting thing is to make sure that your paths are correct. So if you come to the shortcut on your desktop and you right-click and go into Properties, it will actually show you what your path is, where it's pointing to. Okay. Now, for most of you, this will say R Retail Pro 9, RPro 9 executable. Some of you, it will show the D drive, depending on your configuration and how you're set up. But no matter what the drive letter is, you should see the path similar to this. Okay. If it is pointing to the wrong drive, you can change the drive right here to say R or to say D or whatever it needs to be. I don't want to mess up my shortcut, so I'm going to put it back to D. But that is one way to make sure that your shortcut is the proper path, so you're not trying to open up Retail Pro on an incorrect path. Okay, I only have the local copy on my computer, so mine is on my local hard drive. Most of you will see the R in here because it's on one computer and they're all networked to that one computer. But checking the shortcuts is always a good troubleshooting method as well. Okay. Again, all of this is about troubleshooting. So if something is not working, whether it's the monitor, whether it's the receipt printer, whatever the case might be, one of the first things that the technician is going to have you do, and it seems really, really basic and simple, but the important thing to remember when you're troubleshooting is think of the simple solutions first. Try the simple stuff before you start getting into the really detailed, in-depth stuff. So to that end, I know it sounds ridiculous, but to that end, make sure that the unit that you're having problems with is turned on, that it's plugged into power. The other thing is to check your cables. Now, I can tell you at least a dozen times I have been doing tech support and I ask the customer, is everything plugged in? Is it turned on? And I get the answer, yes, it is. I already looked and the cables are all plugged in. What I will usually do at that point is unplug each of the cables, both on the, say it's a receipt printer. So I'll unplug the cable from the receipt printer side. I'll also unplug it and plug it in on the computer side. I'll do the same thing with the power supply. Many, many times in the course of a day, maybe the computer gets bumped by somebody's knee or a cord gets pulled inadvertently, and it gets pulled just enough to where it's not making the connection, but when you look at it, it looks like it's plugged in. By unplugging it and plugging it back in yourself, you can confirm firsthand that you know it is plugged in all the way. You know that that's not the issue. Okay. Now, same thing talking about printers. Another thing that you can do is dump the printer. Now, we most commonly do this with the tag printers. For those of you that have a Zebra tag printer, the dump process is you're going to hold down the feed button and you're going to see it blink once. Then you're going to see it blink twice, and it's going to pause. Then it's going to blink 3 times, and it's going to pause. Then it's going to blink 4 times. After that 4 blink time, you're going to release the feed button, and it's going to start into the dump. Okay. Now, what that means is it's going to start spitting out some tags, and on those tags, it's going to look like a bunch of hieroglyphics, just a bunch of random characters that make no sense at all, but it does eventually stop, and you should be able to see some portion of the phrase press exit or press feed to exit. Some portion of that depending on the size of your tag. Once you see that last thing that you can actually read the letters on, you're going to press the feed button 1 more time, and then you're out of dump. Now, for those of you that are using the Godex, basically the little screen that's on the top, you're going to arrow over to the right, and it is going to give you some promptings to dump the printer. Okay? Follow the promptings, and that will dump your printer. You can also sometimes just fix it by pressing the calibration button on the back of the printer. Most of the time, I will try calibrating it first. Again, try the simple fixes first. If that doesn't work, then go ahead and go through the process of dumping it. But that is a good way sometimes to fix a printer issue. When you've already checked the cables, you've checked the power, it's still not printing for you, take it through a dump. Now with a receipt printer, excuse that, with the receipt printer, what you're going to do is you're going to turn the power off, and then you're going to hold down the feed button and turn the power back on. And it's going to go through, and again, it's going to dump any memory that might be stuck in that printer. The other thing that you can do if you are having a printer problem is to go again, right click on your computer icon, or for those of you that don't have an icon, you can left click on the start button, and you can find where it says computer over here and right click on this. Okay. So once you're in the manage area, you want to come down here to services again, just the same place that we went for the Oracle services. In here is where your print spooler is. So highlight your print spooler, restart it, and then try your printer again. This also wipes out any jobs that might be locked in that printer, and it clears them out. So if unplugging the cables and power doesn't work, if dumping it doesn't work, try clearing the print spooler. And that's like the final step on clearing a printer, especially a receipt printer. Okay. Back into Retail Pro. So know too that a lot of settings can be fixed in the Workstation Preferences, especially when it comes to your peripherals, your cash drawer, your receipt printer, that type of thing. Whoop, I clicked on the wrong button. So bear with me. Okay, Workstation Preferences. So you'll notice in Workstation Preferences, there is a listing here for the peripherals. So if you're having a problem with your cash drawer, it's under Cash Drawer 1. You just kind of want to, it should already be set for one of these two, depending on the type of cash drawer that you have. And so let's just say that I'm going to do the Windows drive-through cash drawer. I can configure that and tell it how it's connected to the computer, or if it's connected to a receipt printer. Okay. If you're using, obviously there's a test button here too. I'm not going to click on it because I don't have a cash drawer connected to my computer. But if you were using the OPOS cash drawer plugin, then you would choose the device name in here under configure. Okay? And since I have nothing plugged in, that's why everything is blank on my side. Okay? Your line displays, for those of you that are in states where a shopper display is required by weights and measures, a lot of you use your Cayenne units as your shopper display, but for those of you that have an actual standalone shopper display or it's on the back of your monitor, this is where you can troubleshoot those shopper displays. Okay. So for those of you using the Genius, yours is set right here. For those of you that have a standalone, it's usually this OPOS one. And again, you can configure these however depending on which one you have. So I'm going to come down to the OPOS. And again, you'll notice the configure brings up the logical device name. I tell it what name I'm looking for and click OK. There's one in here I want to show you. No, it doesn't like it because I don't have anything plugged in. Okay, this is also where you would set up what your shopper display actually shows as the customer is being rung up. So the default message basically shows on your shopper display as everyone is just kind of walking around the store looking at your merchandise. This is what's showing on that shopper display while nothing is being rang up. You do have two lines here. You could, so maybe I have this in there, okay? And this is what I want showing centered on my line display as people are walking around the store. Now, when I go into a new receipt or SO, I can determine what I have printing on line 1, what I have printing on line 2, and whether or not it's left justified, right justified, or centered. Most importantly, though, is when you're ringing up a sale. Line 1, typically you're going to want it to be whatever your description field is. So if your description is in description 1, set it for that. Description 2, set it for that. Pretty self-explanatory. But here are your different options of what you can put in line 1. So you could do a description 1 with the quantity, or any of these in here. Okay. Line 2, you have all the same options. And then obviously when you get to your total, you have some different options as well. Okay. But this is how you can fix or troubleshoot your line display. Okay. For inventory scanners, so if you're getting ready to do your physical inventory, one of the first places that we go is to this inventory scanner field, and we make sure that you are showing what type of scanner you're using. So for those of you that use the Janum scanner or the Honeywell, an iPad, any of those types of things, you're going to want the Palm option. For those of you that are using the old-fashioned PT scanners, you're going to want the portable data terminal. Okay? Now you'll notice if I come over here to configure, the portable terminal basically asks us what COM port you've plugged the download cable into. You choose the proper download or the proper COM port, and then click OK. Everything else is pretty much set the way it needs to be. If you are set for the Palm, you'll notice that you don't get the COM port option. It's whether or not you're using it in Smart Scan mode or Basic mode. If you've rented them from us, it should be set for Basic. If you own the units yourself, a lot of times they're set for Smart Scan. Now, for those of you that are not familiar, Smart Scan allows you to upload your inventory into the scanner. So as you're going through and scanning your inventory, it's comparing what you're scanning to what you have in your inventory right then and there. So instead of finding out if you have errors after you've downloaded your section, it lets you know which items are errors just as you scan them. So it's a very, very nice feature for anyone that's looking to buy a physical inventory scanner and own your own. I definitely recommend that you go. We don't sell the PT anymore. It's been discontinued. But go with one of the units that we do offer now, and we'll go ahead and give you some training on how Smart Scan works and how to set it up. Okay? So any questions about workstation preferences, what you can and can't do in here? Some of you use scales. Some of you have MSRs. But all of your peripherals generally are going to be in this general region. Okay? So After you've made any changes, go ahead and update, and you should be good to go. Okay? Now, it doesn't like that I set it up. I need to go turn that off. Otherwise, I will continuously get a pop-up message telling me that I'm not connected to a cache drawer. Okay, there we go. That should work. Okay, now, that takes care of a lot of the very basic hardware issues that a lot of times come up, or even starting up Retail Pro. Now, some other troubleshooting things that we like to do is, it's not unusual to run a report and something just doesn't seem right, okay? A lot of issues along that line where data doesn't seem to be correct can be fixed under Tools and Technicians Toolkit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and log in as sysadmin, which is what we do recommend when you're in the Technicians Toolkit. Even if you, as a user, have full admin rights, it's still in your best interest to use the sysadmin password when you're in Tech Toolkit, because it recognizes that as the end-all, be-all user, so you won't run into any problems. Now, there are two different areas in here that we recommend that you do on a regular basis. And most of you have these two functions scheduled to run automatically in the wee hours of the morning. And that is the re-indexing and the tuning. Now, the re-indexing basically is going to go in and make sure that all of your computer files are where they should be. So when you run reports, everything is where it's supposed to be. I always tell people, think of re-indexing like a giant filing cabinet. Okay, and every time you sell an item or you add an item into inventory, that particular item doesn't get put exactly in the right spot in the filing cabinet. Well, over time, that filing cabinet becomes almost unusable because you can't find anything, so you tend not to go look there. The same thing happens with computer files. They can get out of index or out of sync. So it is a good idea at least once a week, if you're not scheduled to do this already, once a week, you should come in here and you should run a re-index, okay? Now you'll notice that my index reorganization threshold is set for 2. I'll be honest with you, I don't know necessarily why it's set for 2, other than our lead technician said that's what it should be. And I've learned not to question what Ken says. If he says it, there must be a reason for it. So you go ahead, you click Start. And if I do this, I have very little data, so it shouldn't take too long. Okay, very quick. Okay, when that's done, then highlight Tuning and do the same thing. Click on Start, let it do its tuning. Okay, this hopefully will not take too terribly long. Now tuning, what tuning is doing is it's going through and it's cleaning up minor corruption that might be happening in your data. So sometimes the reason that we don't see proper information, especially in our reports, is because there's some slight corruption to the file it's trying to access, and so it can't access it properly. So tuning basically takes care of that. The good news is, in this particular version, you can do both the re-indexing and the tuning while everybody else is in Retail Pro ringing up sales or making POs or whatever they're doing. This is a completely tolerant activity, meaning that other people can be in Retail Pro at the same time that you're doing this. Okay. In previous versions, we had to kick everybody out to do these two particular functions. And so it had to be either scheduled or you had to plan to do it before or after store hours. Okay. Now, we also do recommend, as most of you are familiar, we do recommend that you do a daily backup. Okay. Someone have a question? Stephanie, you had a question? Okay, so how do you know if you have these scheduled to run? And this is from what kind of errors? Like I said, it's not really an error that comes up as much as it is things just don't look right in your reports. They don't look right in your inventory. How you're going to know if those are scheduled? Great question, by the way. All of you, your services, any of the services that we schedule to run in Retail Pro, we actually use the Windows task or the task scheduler. So if you go down to your Start button and then go to All Programs, actually, I'm going to go in here someplace. Sometimes it's under Accessories, sometimes it's under Administrative Tools. But what you're looking for is the task scheduler. That basically opens up this task scheduler. And on the far left-hand side, I don't have any set up myself, but just like you have all of these listed, you would have a folder that said RPro. And when you highlight the RPro folder, it will show you all of the tasks that you have scheduled right up here in the top half of the screen. So you might see Update Delta, Re-indexing, Tuning. For those of you that have multiple stores, this is where we schedule your polling or your ECM to happen. But this is where you would find out if you have something scheduled. If you do not, and you'd like to have them scheduled, all you have to do is call into tech support and tell the receptionist you need a tech to help you schedule some tasks to run. Or you need to reschedule, or you need to schedule re-indexing or tuning, and she would get you up on the board for that, and any tech can help you take care of that. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Generally, so the question is, does re-indexing tuning have to be done at each station or just from Central? We tend to say just from Central, but if you're having problems on a remote store and not the same problems at the main store, it's not a bad idea to do at the remote store. So generally, we do recommend at the main store, because the main is, especially if the main is managing all of the inventories, then we do recommend that it's done at the main location. Now, you can manually run either one of those at any time, any day, even if it's scheduled to run. So if you just want your own peace of mind that it is running and it is as clean as it possibly can, then you can run it anytime you want during the day. Okay? It's not going to hurt anything if it gets run 3 or 4 or 10 times a day. So know that these two, the re-indexing and the tuning, in 18 years, I've never seen it cause a problem from being done too much. I have seen some issues with it not being done enough. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay? Okay. So let me go ahead and get rid of this. Okay, now the other thing that I want to show you here in the Technician's Toolkit is your backup. So we want to make sure that you are doing a daily backup. We do not do an incremental backup. We do a complete backup every single day. Okay, and so when it says complete or incremental, we want a complete backup. Okay, it's going to automatically start the database after the backup is complete. We basically tell it where we want it to put that backup, and then it creates a set name for it. Now, this is something editable. So I could put this in here as webinar, and when I looked at my backups, I would see a backup that said webinar. Okay, we do not generally recommend that you back up the archive logs. It will slow down your backup tremendously, and there's not really a lot of benefit to it. So we don't usually back up the archives. and we don't usually do a compression, okay? But if you have a really big database, compression is not necessarily a bad thing. Now you may be wondering, well, how do I know if my database is big or not? If you've been using Retail Pro for more than 5 or 6 years, your database is pretty big. For those of you that have upgraded up to version 9, you know that we generally don't move over more than 5 years of data because it is such a big file, and it can slow down your Retail Pro a little bit. So that's kind of the guideline we use, is the 5-year mark. If you have more than 5 years, then do a compression. Okay? After you do all your settings here, you save it, and then you would actually, I didn't put in a browse, so it's going to give me an issue. Now mine, I happen to do under Retail 9 and my backups. So that's my path. Okay, I save that, and now it has no issue. Okay, if I'm going to manually do a backup, so if I'm going to manually do a backup, I just highlight the word backup, and then I click on this start button, and it would go through and it would back up my files. Now, we actually set you up for what we call a redundant backup. So all of you are backing up to a drive on your computer. Typically, we like it to be in the R drive, which is where all of your Retail Pro data is kept. That is exclusively set up for your Retail Pro files. But we want a backup that can leave the store as well. And the main reason we do that, we have had customers over the years that they're doing their backup, but they back up to the computer, and if a fire, flood, hurricane, whatever goes through your store and your backup is on the computer in the store, that computer very likely will get damaged in that natural disaster. So if your backup that you're going to use to recover what you lost on the computer is on that computer, it doesn't do us a whole lot of good. That's why we require that you do a redundant backup and take the backup that is made in Technician's Toolkit, and we schedule that to back up to a CD, a flash drive, the cloud, some other, a removable hard drive, some method that takes it out of your store. Now, backing up to the cloud is probably the most common one these days, and it definitely serves the purpose. It takes it out of your store, but it doesn't require that somebody remembers to take it home with them, like a CD or a external hard drive would do. So, again, that is scheduled in your task scheduler. Under your RPro headings, you would see that backup scheduled in there. And again, it's usually scheduled for the wee hours of the morning, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, except for very, very few stores. Most stores are closed at that time. Unless your store is in Las Vegas and it's in a casino, it's not uncommon for those stores to be open till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay? Any questions about backing up? Okay. Amy, did you have a question? I'm going to unmute you. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. Now, there are a few other things that you might want to be aware of as far as troubleshooting, and primarily it's down here on underneath inventory and underneath miscellaneous. Okay. Now, primarily miscellaneous. So most of you are familiar with building your delta. Okay. The delta is what stores those key performance indicator statistics like sell-through and turn and GMROI. It also holds your SRO statistics, your sold, received, on order quantities. So it is important that this delta table is being updated on a regular basis. Now you can do this from the main screen of Retail Pro, right here underneath Tools. You'll see there's an Update Delta. You can just simply click on this and type in the password, and then it will do the rest. But if you're doing it from the Technician's Toolkit, it's under Miscellaneous. The mode, you want a full Delta backup. You want to choose your subsidiary. So any of you that are using more than one subsidiary, you would pick the subsidiary you wanted to do, or both. Okay. For those of you that are a single store, maybe just a few stores, you probably only have one subsidiary. Okay, you click OK there. Clear out the old data, and if you're interested, you can have it balance your cost on your receiving documents. Then you would click on Start, and it would go through and update that delta. Okay, that's one thing that you can find here in the Miscellaneous. You also calculate sales order balances. Sometimes the sales order balances don't get updated. If you notice that your sales order doesn't seem to be getting updated when you make the receipt against it, it's not updating your sales order. That's your best indication that you need to come in here and have it recalculate, because it's gotten out of sync somehow. And by doing all of this, it will reset it up and make sure that every receipt that's referencing a sales order updates that sales order. Again, you would choose all, whatever you want, all the subsidiaries or just one. And the begin date and end date, I usually set that, if you started noticing a problem in August of this year and you didn't do anything about it, I would take it back to whatever date you noticed the problem first happening, or even go back a month before that. It's not a bad idea to go a little further back than what you need to. Okay. And then this last one, update quantity sent. Absolutely check this, because that is one of the fields that should be getting updated when you reference the sales order on a receipt. You click on Start, the rest the computer does. That's the beautiful thing about most of these settings, is you just have to set up the settings, click on Start, the rest the computer takes care of. Okay. Some other things that you might need to look at is recalculating the item receive date, or calculating the fill percent for a PO. Very similar to this one up here, where the receipt does not seem to be updating the sales order. This one down here is that the voucher doesn't seem to be updating the PO. So same basic concept here. Okay, you choose your subsidiary. Okay, you have the choice of it only affecting your active POs or all of your POs. So if you want all POs, you're going to leave this unchecked. If you wanted to go through and do all of your POs, active and inactive, for as long as you've been using version 9, then leave this use date range unchecked. If you only wanted to go back to, say, the beginning of the year, check this box, and these two date fields populate to where you can change them. Okay, so those are a couple additional settings that you can come in here and have the system go through and update your data. Okay, any questions about these? Anyone run into this situation? Okay. Is this an additional troubleshoot for reports coming out incorrectly? It can be, yes. I most often see it, when I go back in to look at the PO and the PO doesn't seem to be updated, and I know for a fact that I received 90% of the order, but that's not what I'm seeing on the PO. Most of the time, these two particular settings you see most often if you're looking at the documents, but a lot of times you do notice it in the reports. It just depends on how often you're running the reports versus how often you're looking at the documents individually yourself. So yes, you would see some discrepancies in your reports as well. Good question. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the Technician's Toolkit. Okay. And I'm going to minimize the Retail Pro, and I just realized I don't have ECM set up on my computer. I keep all my Retail Pro icons over here, and ECM is not one of those. So if you'll bear with me a moment. Now, ECM, for those of you that does not make any sense, you have no idea what I'm talking about, ECM stands for Enterprise Communication Module. And that's the way that, and I don't have ECM set up at all on my computer. That's lovely. That's the module that is used for sharing information between locations. So multiple stores communicate with each other using that program called ECM. Now, most of you already know this, but just a basic overview of ECM. There are three main processes that happen during an ECM cycle. They happen in a different order depending on if you're the main location or if you're the remote location. But all three processes do happen at all locations. So the easiest, I'm going to give them to you in the easiest order to explain them, even though they may not happen in this order depending on where you're at. So both locations, imagine you have a main location and you have a satellite or remote location. So each of them are going to do what we call a process out. Now the process out is where the computer gathers all the new information that that store has been generating. For the remote location, it's typically new customers, new receipts, if they've done any receiving on their own, any transfers. That's typically what the remote location is going to be sending out. On the main side, it could be new customers, receipts, receiving, transfers, but probably more than anything else, new inventory that's been added in. Okay, and that's if the main location does what we call manages the inventory. In version 9, multiple stores do have the ability to have each of the locations manage their own inventory. It's not something that we strongly recommend, but it can be done. Okay, with a little bit of training and a little bit of, making sure that there's not going to be any conflict, where it can be done. But they both process out, and basically all the new information is taken, compressed down into what we call a mailbag. That mailbag then basically sits there waiting in an out folder until the second process happens, and that second process is called exchange. Now, exchange is exactly like what it sounds like. Each of the stores is going to exchange its new information with the other location. So the main location gets all the data that the remote compressed down up to their location, and the remote gets all the new data from the main that they compressed down and sent down. So basically, it's like you're exchanging gifts, if you will. Okay. The last process is process in, and that's where the computer is going to take this new package that you got, these new files, it's going to decompress them and put them away where they belong. So new inventory rows get added to the inventory, new receipts get added to the former receipt screen, new customers to the customer database. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Now, there is a log that you can see in ECM, and that log will show you if there's been any issue or problem with the sharing of information. What usually clues you in first before you ever think to look at the log is maybe the remote calls you up and says, you know what, you sent me down those new items. I physically have the items in my hand, but I can't find them in the inventory. Or I know I added that customer in. Why aren't you seeing them at the main? Okay, the log will show you when there's been a problem. Okay, the log has two marks on it. It has a big red X or a blue question mark. Now the big red X, pretty self-explanatory, is there was a critical issue. meaning that the data did not get sent for whatever the reason happens to be. A blue question mark is a non-critical error, and what that means is the data got sent, it just didn't get sent in the most efficient way or maybe in its entirety. So either way, if you notice that there have been errors, I do recommend that you call into tech support. They're very well versed in what the different errors mean and how to fix them. And over time, as you work with the technicians, you too also get very well versed in what you're seeing. So that is available in the ECM, and I apologize that I don't have ECM set up on my computer to actually show you. Now, there are some basic troubleshooting. If you've had a problem with polling, there are some basic troubleshooting that you can do. One is and most of them deal with the task manager. So again, I'm going to right click down here and go into task manager. So one of them is to restart the exchange, okay? And that basically means shut down the exchange in ECM, restart it in ECM, and then try to poll again, do a send and receive again. You can also crash or close down the ECM or the ECM proc executable. So if I had it loaded on my computer, you would see it right in this area, and it would say, ECM proc, and you would highlight that particular thing, and then in the process. Okay. Now, if neither of those two things worked, you could shut down or do a restart of the polling computer on both sides. So the main location has a computer that is dedicated for polling, so does the remote. Okay, restart those and restart those on both sides, and then try again after you've given it 2 or 3 minutes to start up the services, then try it again. And Brandon, it won't be a pop-up. If you go into the log, the log shows you minute by minute what happened, and you'll see either the red X or the blue question mark to the side of that entry. So it's not a pop-up, but it's very clear when you're in the log. Okay, good question, thank you. Okay, so that is everything that I have for you, basic troubleshooting tech support for version 9. Like I said, the most common one is giving Retail Pro a chance to fire up after a reboot. I can tell you that that's probably a good 90% of the problems that we come across is down calls. Okay, so sorry to go back, but my question is regarding the backup. Is there a way to go in and update the email that the backup notification goes to? There is, Amy. I personally don't know how to do that. I'm one of the trainers, so I very rarely deal with setting up the email. What I would recommend is give tech support a call and have them show you how to do that. And so the first time, obviously, they'll do it. But if you take good notes, then you shouldn't have any problem changing it yourself if that email should change again. Good news is emails don't change super often. So just make sure that you put your notes someplace that you're going to be able to find them maybe 2 years from now. Okay? So I'm just going to leave this open. Any other questions? You're very welcome. Okay. Okay, then. I'm just going to get rid of all these questions. Okay. Okay, then. Well, if no one has any further questions, I will let you get back to work. And I want to thank you for joining our webinar today. Again, keep all of our webinar topics. Oh, another question. You're very welcome. All of our webinar topics are up on our website under the tech portal and in the training dropdown. We will, if we have not already, we will be posting our 2018 schedule here pretty quick. I know that the trainers, we've already worked out the list of topics, and I believe it just needs to be put up on our website. But feel free to sign up for any and all webinars that you find of interest. Is there any way to fix the lag in a second workstation? We would have to take a closer look, Wesley, to see, because there's a lot of different things that can cause a lag. It's not usually one particular thing that always causes it. So we kind of have to take a look at not only the network between the two computers, but a few other things possibly. So unfortunately, there is a little bit, but we'd have to take a look at the computer specifically to be able to tell you if we can fix it. Okay. I know that's kind of vague, but unfortunately that's the best I can give you at this point. Okay. So again, thank you all, and you should all be receiving an email at some point today with a link to the webinar. We post all of our webinars up on YouTube on our channel. If you go to the Big Hairy, if you type in the search on YouTube, Big Hairy Dog, we're the first thing that comes up with that search. And once you go into our channel, you'll see there's a playlist in there of webinars. So if there's any webinar that you wanted to attend, but things got crazy and you weren't able to attend, feel free to watch any of those videos in there as well. They're free for you to use and watch as many times as you'd like, or have any of your staff watch them as well. Okay, so thank you very much and have a great day. Bye-bye.